Some mistakes destroy lives. Others expose secrets that were never meant to be discovered. On a storm-filled Manhattan evening, the most feared man in America's hidden underworld opened the wrong apartment door, and within seconds both his life and hers would change forever. The rain hammered against the towering glass buildings of Manhattan, turning the city into a sea of silver reflections beneath flashing lights. High above the crowded streets, inside one of the city's most exclusive luxury penthouses, Damian Carter stepped out of a private elevator. At 35, he was known to the financial world as a billionaire investor whose companies quietly dominated real estate, technology, and international logistics. Financial magazines praised his business genius, politicians sought his influence, and the media admired his disciplined private life. None of them knew the truth. Behind the polished image stood America's most feared mafia boss, the silent king of an invisible empire built on information, strategy, and unwavering loyalty. Damian rarely allowed emotions to influence his decisions. Every move was calculated. Every risk carefully measured. Earlier that evening, he had returned from a confidential meeting that carried enough danger to reshape alliances across the country. His mind remained occupied with encrypted reports and difficult decisions as he walked through the identical hallway shared by neighboring penthouses. Without noticing the small difference in the apartment number, Damian unlocked a door that looked exactly like his own. The door opened. He stepped inside, then stopped. The elegant living room stretched before him, decorated with modern artwork, white marble flooring and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glowing Manhattan skyline. But it was not his home. Near the dining table stood a woman, completely frozen. Amelia Brooks, 31 years old, brilliant scientist, CEO of one of America's largest biotechnology companies. She had been preparing for an emergency board meeting that would begin in less than an hour. Corporate documents, confidential research files, and a laptop displaying encrypted financial projections covered the dining table. One elegant navy blazer rested across a chair while she hurriedly organized scattered papers. But none of those things captured Damian's attention. Amelia was desperately trying to hide a torn envelope, several anonymous threatening letters, and a cracked cell phone that had obviously been damaged in panic moments before his arrival. Their eyes met. Time seemed to stop. Her heart pounding was almost visible in the silence that settled between them. For one brief moment, Damian expected her to scream. She didn't. Instead, she quietly gathered the papers against her chest and looked at him with exhausted eyes filled with fear rather than anger. "Please," she said in little more than a whisper. Her voice trembled. "You came into the wrong apartment." Damian remained perfectly still. "I know." She swallowed nervously before speaking again. "I don't care what you think you saw." Another pause. "Please, just forget it." Something about those words immediately unsettled him. People who feared strangers usually demanded explanations. Amelia wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid that someone else might discover he had seen what was hidden inside this apartment. Damian's instincts sharpened. His gaze quietly scanned the room. Nothing appeared unusual at first glance. Luxury furniture. Fresh flowers. Executive documents. Everything looked exactly like the home of a successful corporate executive. Then he noticed smaller details. Every curtain remained tightly closed despite the spectacular city view. 3 separate deadbolt locks secured the entrance. A baseball bat rested discreetly beside the kitchen island. Several unopened security company brochures lay inside a wastebasket. Someone had recently scratched deep marks around the front door lock. Amelia had not been protecting herself from random crime. Someone had been trying to reach her. She unconsciously stepped backward, her breathing uneven as she continued watching Damian. He understood immediately. Whatever threatened her had already stolen her sense of feeling safe. Without asking questions. Without revealing his own identity. Without even introducing himself. Damian quietly closed the apartment door behind him to shield the interior from anyone walking through the hallway. The simple gesture caught Amelia completely by surprise. For the first time that evening, the panic inside her expression softened ever so slightly. Neither of them spoke. The silence between them carried more meaning than conversation ever could. Then Damian's eyes drifted upward. Near the decorative smoke detector above the bookshelf, a tiny red indicator light blinked once. He shifted his attention toward another ceiling corner. Then another. 3 miniature surveillance cameras had been professionally concealed inside Amelia's own penthouse. They were not part of the building's security system. Someone had secretly been watching her from inside her own home. The discovery of the hidden surveillance cameras changed everything. Yet Damian Carter reacted as though he had noticed nothing at all. He simply glanced toward Amelia, offered a polite apology for entering the wrong apartment, and quietly introduced himself as her neighbor. His calm voice carried none of the panic she expected. Somehow, that quiet confidence slowed her heart pounding more effectively than any reassurance could have. For reasons she could not explain, the stranger standing in her living room felt less like another threat and more like the first person who had entered her life without demanding something in return. After leaving her apartment, Damian did not return to sleep. Instead, he entered his own penthouse and activated a private intelligence network that answered only to him. Within minutes, encrypted reports began appearing across the monitors inside his office. Every detail connected to Amelia Brooks surfaced one file at a time. She was not born into wealth or influence. After losing both parents while still building her first biotechnology startup, she had refused to sell her dream despite overwhelming financial pressure. Working endless nights inside rented laboratories, she transformed a small research company into one of America's largest biotechnology corporations. Investors admired her brilliance, employees respected her integrity, and medical journals described her as one of the country's most innovative scientific minds. Yet one confidential report explained why someone wanted to destroy her. Hidden inside her company's most secure laboratory was a revolutionary medical platform capable of detecting life-threatening diseases years before traditional diagnostic methods. If completed, the technology could save millions of lives across the world. Governments wanted access. Pharmaceutical giants wanted ownership. Unknown criminal organizations wanted control over the patents before public release. Whoever controlled Amelia's research would possess unimaginable financial power. Damian quietly closed the report. The situation was no longer simple corporate espionage. It had become something far more dangerous. The following morning, Amelia forced herself to attend the emergency board meeting as though nothing had happened. Her presentation remained flawless, her leadership steady, and her confidence unshaken despite another sleepless night. Only she knew how much fear still lingered beneath her composed expression. Every unfamiliar face inside the conference room now made her wonder who could be watching her. Later that afternoon, a soft knock echoed through her apartment. Damian stood outside holding a small box of premium coffee beans. I realized neighbors should probably meet under better circumstances. Amelia smiled for the first time since the previous evening. I suppose breaking into someone's apartment isn't the best introduction. A quiet laugh escaped both of them, gently dissolving the awkwardness between strangers. Over the following days, their conversations became surprisingly natural. They met in the building's private cafe before work, exchanged casual conversations inside the elevator, and occasionally shared dinner on the rooftop terrace overlooking Manhattan. Amelia believed Damian was simply another wealthy businessman living a private life. She admired how carefully he listened instead of constantly talking about himself. Damian, meanwhile, never revealed the truth. The king of a hidden empire preferred remaining invisible while quietly learning who Amelia truly was. One evening, while Amelia worked late at the office, Damian entered her apartment using temporary access authorized by the building's security manager after reporting suspected electronic interference. His experienced specialists carefully searched every room. The results confirmed his suspicions. 3 hidden surveillance cameras. 2 concealed microphones. 1 unauthorized wireless transmitter hidden inside a decorative wall clock. Without disturbing a single piece of furniture, Damian silently removed every device and replaced them with harmless replicas, ensuring whoever had installed them would never realize they had lost their surveillance. The operation lasted less than 20 minutes. When Amelia returned home, she immediately noticed something unusual. For the first time in weeks, the apartment felt safe. She could not explain why. The suffocating sensation of constantly being watched had quietly disappeared. As days passed, she found herself trusting Damian more than anyone else around her. Their friendship grew without promises, romance, or dramatic confessions. It was built upon simple moments of honesty, thoughtful conversations, and the comforting certainty that whenever uncertainty appeared, Damian somehow made the world feel calmer. Late one night, however, another encrypted intelligence report arrived inside Damian's private office. His investigators had finally traced the source of the information leaks surrounding Amelia's research. The surveillance was not being controlled from outside the company. Someone sitting on Amelia's own executive leadership team had been secretly feeding confidential research, security schedules, and board meeting decisions directly to organized crime. The enemy had never been trying to break into the company. The enemy had already been working inside it. Amelia Brooks believed she lived next door to an unusually thoughtful billionaire who valued privacy as much as she did. She never questioned why Damian Carter always seemed remarkably calm, why building employees greeted him with quiet respect, or why influential people lowered their voices whenever he entered a room. To the outside world, Damian was exactly what every magazine claimed, a brilliant investment executive whose financial empire stretched across international markets. The headlines celebrated his business instincts. Television interviews praised his discipline. Nobody suspected that behind the polished reputation stood the hidden king of the largest mafia organization on the East Coast, an invisible empire that survived through intelligence, absolute loyalty, and perfect control rather than public displays of force. The moment Damian confirmed someone inside Amelia's company was working with organized crime, he quietly changed one of his oldest rules. For years, he had never allowed personal emotions to interfere with strategic decisions. Protection was always assigned through trusted commanders, never by his own direct involvement. Amelia became the first exception. Without informing anyone outside his inner circle, Damian ordered a discreet security operation around her apartment building. Elite specialists blended naturally into everyday city life. One posed as a doorman, another as a maintenance engineer, one drove a delivery van that never carried packages, while another spent long afternoons inside a nearby cafe pretending to write business reports. None appeared threatening. None attracted attention. Together, they transformed the entire neighborhood into an invisible shield. Amelia remained completely unaware. She only noticed strange coincidences. One rainy evening, the elevator she normally used suddenly displayed an unexpected maintenance notice, forcing her to take another lift. Minutes later, technicians quietly removed damaged wiring that could have caused a serious accident. Another afternoon, a speeding delivery truck abruptly stopped before reaching the pedestrian crossing she had just stepped onto, blocked by an unmarked utility vehicle that seemed to appear from nowhere. During a business conference, an unknown visitor requesting urgent access to her office was politely redirected after security unexpectedly verified his credentials twice. Each incident felt unusual. None felt connected. Amelia simply convinced herself Manhattan was becoming increasingly unpredictable. Damian never corrected her assumptions. Watching from a respectful distance became strangely difficult. He found himself looking forward to their evening conversations overlooking the skyline, where discussions about medical innovation slowly replaced cautious small talk. Amelia spoke passionately about the future she hoped to build, a world where early diagnosis could save families before illness stole precious time from them. She never boasted about success. She spoke only about possibilities. Damian listened more carefully than he admitted, quietly admiring a woman whose greatest ambition was helping strangers she would never meet. One evening, as they shared coffee on the rooftop garden, a cold wind swept across the city. Amelia wrapped her arms around herself. Damian silently removed his tailored coat and placed it over her shoulders. "You'll get cold," he said. "And you?" He smiled faintly. "I've survived worse weather." She looked at him for several quiet seconds, noticing how naturally he always placed other people before himself. The gesture carried no expectation, no hidden intention. It simply made her feel safe. For reasons she could not explain, every anxious breath became easier whenever Damian stood close enough to remind her she was no longer facing everything alone. Unknown to Amelia, Damian's senior advisors had already noticed the difference. "The king is changing," one quietly remarked inside headquarters. Another answered in little more than a whisper. "He no longer protects only the empire." The words were true. Without realizing it, Damian had begun thinking about Amelia differently. Every intelligence report involving her reached his desk first. Every security briefing received his personal approval. Somewhere beneath years of discipline, one impossible thought quietly settled into his mind. She was becoming mine to protect. Not through ownership. Through responsibility. Late one evening, after another exhausting board meeting, Amelia drove into the underground parking garage beneath her corporate headquarters. The building appeared almost empty, its polished concrete reflecting pale overhead lights. As she stepped from her vehicle, unfamiliar voices echoed from behind a row of black SUVs. Curious, she moved only a few steps closer. Then she froze. Standing beneath the dim lights was Damian. His calm expression had disappeared, replaced by the quiet authority of someone accustomed to impossible decisions. Across from him stood an armed intruder who had somehow entered the restricted garage. Before Amelia could fully understand what she was seeing, Damian reacted with astonishing speed, expertly disarming the man and restraining him without unnecessary harm. The entire encounter lasted only moments, ending before panic could spread. The stranger was escorted away by unseen security personnel. Silence returned. Then Damian slowly turned. His eyes met Amelia's. In that single moment, she realized the gentle billionaire next door had been hiding a far more dangerous life than she had ever imagined. The image of Damian inside the underground parking garage refused to leave Amelia's mind. She replayed the moment again and again, searching for an explanation that fit the man she thought she knew. The calm billionaire who listened patiently to her dreams and quietly shared coffee on the rooftop had moved with impossible confidence when confronted by danger. Nothing about his actions had been reckless. Every movement had been controlled, precise, and designed to end the situation without unnecessary harm. Instead of making her more afraid, the memory only deepened her curiosity. The following evening, Damian knocked gently on her apartment door. "I owe you an explanation," he said. Amelia invited him inside without hesitation. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The silence carried no hostility, only questions waiting for honest answers. Damian finally admitted that his public reputation as a billionaire investor was real, but incomplete. Over many years he had built a private organization that operated beyond ordinary corporate influence. Its purpose was to identify criminal networks using legitimate businesses to finance fraud, human exploitation, and international corruption. He never described himself as a mafia leader. He simply explained that his world required difficult decisions ordinary executives never faced. Amelia studied his face carefully. "You could have hidden everything." "I could have," Damian answered quietly. "But I don't want our friendship built on lies." She expected to find arrogance behind his confidence. Instead, she found responsibility. Every confidential file Damian showed her involved criminal organizations laundering money through shell corporations, bribing officials, manipulating pharmaceutical markets, or stealing life-saving research. He never targeted honest competitors. He never pursued innocent people. His actions followed a strict moral code built around one principle. Power existed to protect those who could not protect themselves. That single truth unsettled Amelia more than anything else. Her scientific mind searched for logical answers while her heart recognized the kindness she had experienced from the very beginning. The two realities refused to fit together. One part of her believed no one should operate outside the law. Another part quietly admitted that Damian had repeatedly saved lives without asking for recognition. Days passed before she finally spoke about it. "I still don't agree with everything." Damian smiled faintly. "I wasn't asking you to." His answer surprised her. He never demanded agreement. He respected independent thought. For the first time in years, someone valued Amelia's intelligence instead of expecting blind acceptance. Their conversations became longer, deeper, and far more honest. They debated ethics, leadership, responsibility, and justice late into the evening while the Manhattan skyline shimmered beyond the windows. Neither tried to change the other's beliefs. Instead, they learned to understand them. As trust grew, Amelia quietly began helping Damian from the only place she truly understood: data. Using her expertise in biotechnology finance, she carefully reviewed years of corporate records, vendor contracts, investment transfers, and research partnerships connected to her company. Tiny irregularities emerged where no ordinary auditor would have looked. Several consulting firms existed only on paper. Research grants had been redirected through fake nonprofit foundations. Confidential patents were repeatedly discussed before official board approval. Each discovery connected back to organized crime. Working together, Damian's investigators and Amelia's financial analysts slowly uncovered a hidden corruption network stretching across multiple corporations. The people responsible had never cared about medical innovation. They cared only about controlling discoveries capable of generating billions of dollars. One evening, Damian quietly watched Amelia reviewing hundreds of financial reports across her dining table. "You should rest." She looked up with a tired smile. "So should you." For a brief moment, both laughed. The tension disappeared. Somewhere between long nights and shared responsibilities, friendship had quietly become something much deeper. Neither spoke about it aloud. They simply found comfort in each other's presence. Whenever uncertainty surrounded Amelia, Damian somehow made the world feel safe. Whenever Damian questioned the burden of leadership, Amelia reminded him why protecting innocent lives still mattered. Neither realized someone else had been watching every step. Several floors above the executive boardroom, Amelia's chairman, Charles Whitmore, stood before a panoramic window studying confidential surveillance photographs of Damian and Amelia together. His expression remained perfectly calm. So she refused every warning. He closed the file and pressed a secure communication button. "I want Amelia Brooks removed before tomorrow's shareholder meeting." The voice on the other end answered immediately. "It will be arranged." Charles ended the call without hesitation. His decision had nothing to do with business anymore. He had just secretly ordered Amelia's kidnapping. The annual International Biotechnology Innovation Summit brought together the world's most influential scientists, investors and corporate leaders beneath one roof in Manhattan. For Amelia Brooks, it was supposed to be the most important presentation of her career. Her revolutionary medical platform was finally ready for global partnerships, and thousands watched as she confidently stepped onto the stage beneath brilliant lights. She spoke about saving lives instead of building fortunes, about making advanced diagnostics available to ordinary families rather than exclusive institutions. The audience applauded her vision. None of them realized someone had already decided she would never finish changing the world. As the conference ended, Amelia left the convention center through a private executive exit arranged by event organizers. A luxury vehicle displaying official conference credentials waited exactly where her schedule indicated. Everything appeared normal. The driver greeted her professionally, security staff nodded without concern, and the vehicle quietly joined Manhattan traffic. It never reached her destination. Within minutes, encrypted communication signals around the vehicle disappeared completely. Back at headquarters, Damian's private security network immediately detected the interruption. Every emergency protocol activated simultaneously. The impossible had happened. Amelia Brooks had vanished. Silence spread through Damian's command center as intelligence officers searched every available surveillance network across the city. Thousands of cameras, financial transactions, vehicle registrations, and communication records were analyzed within minutes. Then one encrypted report appeared on Damian's desk. His expression changed. Not because Amelia had been taken. Because someone inside his own empire had opened the door. The investigation identified Victor Kane, one of Damian's oldest underbosses, as the source of the security breach. 4 years Victor had appeared completely loyal, overseeing logistics and international operations without raising suspicion. Behind that reputation, he had secretly shared Damian's confidential protection schedules with Charles Whitmore's criminal network. Amelia's movements, conference itinerary, and security routes had all been sold before the summit even began. The room fell into absolute silence. No enemy could have achieved this alone. Only betrayal from within made such precision possible. Several senior commanders demanded immediate retaliation. Others called for emergency mobilization across every division of the empire. Damian remained perfectly calm. Anger rewarded traitors. Control defeated them. Quietly, he authorized the largest defensive operation in the organization's history. Safe houses were activated across multiple cities. Honest executives received discreet protection. Every financial account connected to Victor Kane was frozen within minutes. Internal communication systems were completely rebuilt. Loyal commanders prepared for the possibility that a full-scale war could no longer be avoided. Across the Atlantic coastline, hidden inside an isolated private research estate disguised as a pharmaceutical testing facility, Amelia slowly regained consciousness. The luxurious surroundings confused her. She was not chained. She was not physically harmed. The doors remained locked, but every room appeared comfortable. Whoever controlled the estate wanted something far more valuable than ransom. They wanted her research. Fear settled quietly inside her chest, yet panic never replaced reason. She remembered every conversation Damian had ever shared about observing before reacting. So she listened. Every hallway carried fragments of conversations. Scientists argued about stolen patents. Executives discussed offshore accounts. Security teams mentioned delivery schedules and encrypted servers. Amelia memorized everything. She quietly noted employee names, laboratory numbers, passwords spoken carelessly, and shipment dates written across digital displays. Other researchers being held inside the estate had almost surrendered hope, believing rescue would never come. Amelia refused to let despair spread. She organized quiet routines, encouraged frightened captives to remain mentally focused, and reminded them that surviving together required patience rather than panic. Each evening they exchanged small pieces of information until scattered observations slowly formed a complete picture of the enemy's operation. She was not a victim. She became the calm center holding everyone else together. Meanwhile, Damian's intelligence officers intercepted hidden messages leaving the estate. Every report described the same extraordinary detail. Subject Amelia Brooks continues assisting other captives. Morale remains unexpectedly high. She continues gathering information. Reading those updates, Damian understood something that reached far beyond admiration. Amelia possessed the rare courage that could never be taught. She protected others even while facing uncertainty herself. Late that night, Damian stood alone before the enormous digital map inside headquarters. Around him waited hundreds of loyal men and women prepared to follow any command. Every route into the enemy compound had been calculated. Every contingency planned. One advisor finally spoke. "Give the order, sir. The Empire is ready." Damian slowly removed his tailored jacket and placed it across the back of his chair. "No." The room looked at him in disbelief. "This ends with me." Without another word, the king walked toward the exit. Leaving behind his entire empire, Damian Carter entered enemy headquarters completely alone. The enemy believed Damian Carter would arrive with an army. Instead, the king entered their hidden compound alone, carrying nothing except absolute confidence and a carefully designed strategy. Every movement had been calculated long before he crossed the front gate. While rival commanders focused entirely on him, elite members of his organization quietly surrounded the estate from every direction, remaining invisible until the perfect moment. This was never a reckless rescue. It was a distraction designed to protect innocent lives before the real operation unfolded. Inside the research facility, Amelia sensed something had changed. Security patrols suddenly abandoned their normal routes. Emergency messages echoed through the corridors. Locked checkpoints opened and closed without warning. Senior executives hurried toward the command center, convinced Damian had walked directly into their trap. They never imagined the greatest weakness already existed inside their own security network. 4 days, Amelia had quietly memorized every access code, maintenance schedule and emergency override procedure she overheard from careless technicians. During the confusion, she calmly entered an unattended monitoring room disguised as a data analyst's office. Without damaging equipment or triggering alarms, she initiated a harmless emergency maintenance protocol that temporarily disabled electronic door locks, surveillance cameras and internal communication systems throughout several sections of the facility. Lights flickered. Digital screens restarted. Security feeds disappeared. Within seconds, dozens of locked rooms quietly opened. The frightened researchers and civilian employees trapped inside looked toward Amelia in disbelief. She smiled calmly. "This is our chance." Instead of running alone, she guided everyone through the safest evacuation routes she had mapped inside her memory over the previous days. Elderly scientists, young laboratory assistants, maintenance workers and administrative staff stayed close together while Amelia calmly directed them through service corridors toward emergency exits. Fear still existed, but hope moved faster. Every reassuring whisper reminded people to remain patient, breathe steadily, and never leave anyone behind. Meanwhile, Damian advanced through the estate with remarkable composure. Every obstacle placed before him had already been anticipated through Amelia's secretly gathered intelligence. Hidden passages became escape routes. Secure checkpoints became empty hallways after electronic systems quietly shut down. The enemy's numerical advantage slowly disappeared because their own technology no longer obeyed them. Outside, Damian's loyal soldiers finally entered the compound, not to seek revenge, but to protect the innocent civilians Amelia had already led toward safety. One after another, frightened captives were escorted away without chaos. Veteran commanders quickly realized something extraordinary. The rescue had succeeded because Amelia had prepared it from inside. By the time Damian reached the central laboratory, Amelia was already waiting beside the final group of rescued civilians. For several silent moments, neither of them moved. Then she walked toward him. Her breath remained steady despite everything they had survived. "I knew you'd come." Damian's usually controlled expression softened. "I promised." Around them, soldiers quietly exchanged respectful glances. Weeks earlier they had considered Amelia an executive caught in extraordinary circumstances. Now they understood they were standing beside someone whose courage had saved countless lives. Respect spread naturally through the ranks. No speeches were necessary. Loyalty recognized character without needing introductions. As evacuation helicopters carried the rescued civilians toward safety, Damian finally understood he could no longer hide the truth. Standing beneath the first light of dawn, he looked directly into Amelia's eyes. "There is something you deserve to know." She remained silent. "I am not only an investor, He paused. I lead the organization people fear. Everything they call the East Coast Empire answers to me. The words settled quietly between them. Amelia closed her eyes for only a brief moment before looking back at him. She remembered every decision he had made. Every innocent life he had protected. Every opportunity he had given people instead of taking from them. Every promise he had quietly kept. She saw neither the terrifying stories nor the whispered reputation. She saw the honorable man who carried impossible responsibility without abandoning compassion. Instead of stepping away, she stepped closer. I don't belong to your empire, she said gently. Damian nodded. I know. But I choose to stand beside you. A quiet smile appeared across his face. His voice dropped into a soft whisper. That choice will always be yours. Their hands met naturally. Not through obligation. Not through power. But through complete trust. At that moment, everyone present understood the truth. She became powerful. Not because she ruled beside a king. But because she had become the strength that even the king relied upon. Far away inside a heavily fortified command center, the defeated rival Mafia King slowly studied reports confirming the rescue's success. Without visible anger, he folded the documents and looked toward a digital map displaying every business connected to Damian Carter's empire. Then he issued one final command. Prepare every division. This time, we attack the entire empire. The rival king's final declaration transformed hidden conflict into a nationwide crisis almost overnight. Across Manhattan, Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington, corporations connected to Damian Carter's business network suddenly faced coordinated cyber attacks, financial sabotage, market manipulation, and carefully orchestrated misinformation campaigns. Luxury hotels received anonymous threats, research facilities became targets of industrial espionage, and investment firms found themselves under relentless pressure. The enemy believed destroying public confidence would weaken Damian's empire long before they ever confronted its leadership. They underestimated the discipline of the king. Inside headquarters, Damian refused every proposal driven by revenge. His commanders expected aggressive retaliation, but instead they received precise instructions focused on protecting ordinary people. Every restaurant, hotel, research center, and logistics company connected to his organization quietly increased civilian security. Families were relocated before danger reached them, employees received anonymous protection, and emergency response teams stood ready without attracting public attention. Damian understood that true power was measured by the number of innocent lives preserved, not by the number of enemies defeated. His empire would never become what it was fighting against. Standing beside him, Amelia transformed into the strategist no rival had anticipated. Years spent leading one of America's largest biotechnology corporations had taught her how information flowed through global markets. She recognized financial patterns hidden beneath complex transactions, exposing shell companies, offshore investment funds, and fraudulent research partnerships secretly financing the rival syndicate. Working alongside Damian's intelligence analysts, she mapped an international web of corruption stretching across multiple industries. Every discovery quietly removed another pillar supporting the enemy's operations. Instead of attacking people, they dismantled influence. Government regulators received anonymous evidence. International auditors uncovered illegal financial transfers. Major banks suspended suspicious accounts. Legitimate corporations severed partnerships with criminal front companies before irreversible damage occurred. One careful decision after another slowly isolated the rival organization until its financial strength began collapsing under its own deception. The war continued, but it was being won through intelligence, patience, and control rather than chaos. Watching Amelia lead complex investigations with remarkable composure, Damian's senior commanders developed profound admiration for her. She never raised her voice. She never demanded authority. Yet experienced analysts, security directors, and veteran advisors naturally followed her recommendations because every decision protected lives while strengthening the empire. Respect could not be ordered. It had to be earned. Weeks later, during a confidential strategy meeting, one of Damian's oldest commanders quietly stood before the room. We have followed the king for many years, he said. His attention shifted toward Amelia. Today we also recognize the woman who reminded us why this empire deserves loyalty. One by one, the remaining commanders rose from their seats. The gesture carried no ceremony, only respect. Amelia lowered her eyes, humbled by the moment. She had never sought influence inside Damian's world, yet somehow she had become an essential part of its future. Her compassion balanced Damian's strength. Her intelligence strengthened his strategy. Together they transformed an organization once built only for survival into one increasingly dedicated to protecting innocent lives from corruption before harm could spread. Many quietly began referring to them in private conversations. The king. And the queen. Not because a crown had been placed upon her, but because leadership had already found her. Months later, coordinated international investigations dismantled the rival syndicate completely. Criminal finances disappeared beneath legal scrutiny, corrupt executives surrendered valuable evidence, and hidden alliances dissolved without a single public celebration. Damian refused every opportunity to expand his own influence into the territory left behind. Other organizations rushed to claim abandoned power, but he declined. Our purpose was never conquest, he reminded his advisors. It was always to protect the future. Peace gradually returned to the cities that had endured months of uncertainty. Employees returned to work without fear. Research laboratories reopened. Amelia's revolutionary medical technology resumed final testing, bringing hope back to millions of patients waiting for life-changing treatment. For the first time in many years, Damian looked across the Manhattan skyline and saw possibility instead of constant responsibility. Late one quiet evening, he invited Amelia onto the rooftop terrace of their building where everything had quietly begun. The city lights shimmered below them. Rain drifted softly across the skyline. Amelia smiled. I still can't believe all of this started because you opened the wrong apartment door. Damian remained silent for several moments before looking toward the neighboring penthouse. A faint smile crossed his face. It wasn't entirely the accident you believe it was. Amelia's expression slowly changed. What do you mean? Damian took a slow breath. The truth about that night changes everything you think you know. Months after the final conflict ended, Manhattan felt different. The constant uncertainty that had once hidden beneath its glittering skyline slowly disappeared. The long war that threatened corporations, research centers, and countless innocent lives became a chapter remembered only through confidential reports and quiet conversations. Betrayal had been exposed, justice had prevailed, and for the first time in years, Damian Carter's empire stood without the weight of immediate danger pressing against it. Peace had finally returned, not because every enemy had vanished but because fear no longer ruled the future. One quiet evening, Damian invited Amelia to the rooftop terrace overlooking the city where so many of their conversations had begun. The sunset painted the skyline in shades of gold while a gentle breeze carried away the last traces of winter. Standing beside the glass railing, Damian held a thin confidential folder in his hands. There is one truth I never told you, he said softly. Amelia looked at him with quiet curiosity. I thought everything had already come to light. So did I. He handed her the file. Inside were photographs, maintenance records, and security reports recovered after the investigation. Amelia carefully read every page, her expression slowly changing from curiosity to disbelief. According to the evidence, someone had secretly switched the electronic apartment security labels on the night they first met. Damian's penthouse and Amelia's residence had been deliberately altered inside the building's digital access system. The criminals expected professional assassins to enter her apartment without attracting suspicion while she prepared for the board meeting. Instead, Damian had unknowingly reached the door first. His unexpected arrival disrupted the entire operation before it could begin. Amelia lowered the documents, her heart pounding exactly as it had the first time she saw the stranger standing inside her living room. So, she whispered, you never actually opened the wrong door. Damian smiled gently. I opened the one destiny chose. Silence settled between them. For months Amelia had believed chance brought them together. Now she realized one impossible mistake had prevented her death before either of them understood what was happening. Fate had quietly placed the right person in the wrong place at the perfect moment. She stepped close beside him. I spent so much time wondering why that happened. Damian looked toward the glowing skyline. Sometimes life protects us before we even know we need saving. Those words stayed with Amelia forever. The years that followed transformed both of their worlds. Damian gradually redirected more of his resources toward legitimate global businesses, expanding ethical investment funds, medical research partnerships, educational foundations, and international humanitarian projects. The influence once associated only with hidden power became a force that quietly strengthened communities around the world. His empire remained disciplined, but its greatest victories were no longer measured by defeating enemies. They were measured by the number of lives protected before hardship ever reached them. Amelia fulfilled the promise she had carried since the beginning. Her biotechnology company expanded far beyond corporate success, establishing affordable diagnostic centers in underserved communities across America and internationally. Families who once had no access to advanced medical care now received hope years before illness could steal precious time. Every new clinic reminded her why she had refused to surrender, even when fear surrounded her from every direction. Together they built a future founded not on wealth but on trust. Damian never tried to control Amelia's choices. Amelia never asked Damian to abandon the responsibilities that shaped him. Instead, they strengthened one another through honesty, compassion, and unwavering loyalty. Whenever uncertainty appeared, they faced it together. Whenever one carried too much responsibility, the other quietly shared the burden. People often described Amelia as the queen beside the king. They misunderstood. She was never chosen because she needed rescue. She was chosen because her courage equaled his, her intelligence challenged his, and her compassion completed everything his strength alone never could. She was not a victim. She became powerful. Not through titles. Not through privilege. But through character. Nearly 2 years after the night that changed everything, another peaceful evening settled over Manhattan. Damian walked through the familiar hallway toward Amelia's apartment. He paused outside the same door that destiny had once placed before him. This time, he did not reach for the handle. Instead, he smiled quietly and knocked. A few seconds later, Amelia opened the door with the same warm eyes that had once carried only uncertainty. "You're knocking now?" she asked with a playful smile. Damian nodded. "Accidents brought us together." His voice softened into a gentle whisper. "But trust is what keeps me here." Amelia reached for his hand. Together they stepped inside. The door closed gently behind them. Not as strangers protected by chance, but as a king and a queen who had discovered that the greatest empire anyone could ever build was one founded on trust, compassion, and the courage to open the right door, even when destiny first disguised it as the wrong one.